Hey guys, it's Katie and welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. I've been trying to think of a new intro for my videos for anyone who might be new, but they all just come across as like super cheesy. But if you are new here, hi, my name is Katie. I am a freelance editor and an indie author, and my YA contemporary novel, The Anti-Virginity Pact, just came out June 16th, so I'll have links down below if you're interested. I would love it if you would pick up a copy. But today we're doing a book tag, which I haven't actually done in quite a while, it seems like, but I'm excited to do this video because I feel like it's a good way to wrap up midway through the year, especially because I haven't been as consistent with posting like monthly wrap-ups. So I feel like I've read a lot of books so far this year that we haven't even had a chance to talk about yet. So there are 13 questions with this tag. I'm going to try and use a different book for everyone, even though there are books that would work for several of the questions. That way we can have a wide variety of things to talk about. And I'll have all of the books that I talk about today linked down below in the description if you want to go check them out. But other than that, let's just get straight into the questions. Question number 1 is the best book that you've read so far in 2020. We're already starting off hard. I'm just realizing now how clear my sunburn is. There are like 5 books that I've read so far this year that could definitely take this spot, but the one I'm gonna use is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I read this for our book club. Can't remember what month it was, maybe it was May. I run a book club over on my Patreon page and I loved this book. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I think the majority of the people in our book club loved it too. Like, this was just so much fun. This is a young adult thriller if you haven't read it, and it follows our main character Pip, who's essentially looking into a cold case in her small town as a school project because the pretty and popular girl went missing, I want to say like 5 years before that, and everyone just assumed that her boyfriend had done it and then killed himself, and Pip doesn't think that's what actually happened to her, so she starts to investigate. And I've had such a negative track record with young adult thrillers. I love adult thrillers, and every young adult one I read seems to disappoint me, and this one blew me out of the water. Like, I went in with kind of iffy expectations because of my track record with young adult thrillers, and this was so good. I loved the ending. I have a whole, like, I think 24-hour reading vlog where I was reading it if you want to check it out, but this had so many good twists and turns in it. I didn't find it predictable at all. I loved our main character Pip. Just like everything about this book did it right for me. Would highly recommend the audiobook if you're gonna read it. It was just really good. Would highly recommend. And this clip keeps falling out of my hair, so we're gonna toss it. So our second question is, what is the best sequel that you've read in 2020? And surprisingly enough, I've only read one series this year. Nothing else has been sequels, but I did read the first 4 books in a series. So my favorite within that series was called Single White Vampire. This is the 3rd book in the Arjano vampire series. These are just like kind of trashy adult paranormal romances. They've definitely filled that vampire void in my reading life. I love this series. Would highly recommend picking up the audiobook. If you've never read the series, basically we're following a different member in this Arjano family who's a vampire, and it's like a different love story for each member of this family. I think why this 3rd one was my favorite one is because our main character is this like 600-year-old vampire, and he's a writer, and he's just kind of a hermit. He's so sick of people. He doesn't want to deal with it. He's just chilling in his house writing his books and doesn't want to deal with the outside world, and I loved his character. I related to his character, and I definitely think this is the funniest book in the series so far, so would recommend. The 3rd question is a new release that you haven't read yet but you want to. This one's easy. Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This just came out in May, and this is our book club pick for July, so I'm about to read it. I'm really excited. I've loved Elizabeth Acevedo's previous books. I just read With Fire on High this month, and I read The Poet X back in 2018, and she's quickly becoming one of my favorite authors, so I'm very excited for her new book. Honestly, I don't even know what it's about, and I don't want to know. I like going into my books blind. I think this one might also be written in verse. I have the audiobook all lined up and ready to go because she narrates her audiobooks herself, which I love. So I'm really looking forward to this one. Number 4 is the most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I'm kind of cheating because I already read it, but it's technically like not even out yet. I just had it early, which was Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This comes out June 30th, and I wanted to put this one for the first question for favorite book that you've read so far this year because it was really good, but it was also my most anticipated book of this year. I love Riley Sager. He writes adult mystery thrillers. They all kind of walk the line of maybe this is going to go into horror, maybe it's gonna have some paranormal aspects to it, and I really like that kind of tilt to it. Home Before Dark is my new favorite of his. I absolutely devoured this book. If you liked The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, I think you'll really like this book. It's about a creepy haunted house basically. Our main character Maggie lived there with her family when she was 5 years old, and they fled in the middle of the night. And now that she's an adult, she's inherited the house and she goes back to it. And I loved it. I loved this book. It was just as good as I was hoping it would be. Number 5 is your biggest disappointment of the year. So for me, a disappointment, it can't just be a book that was underwhelming. It has to be one that I had high expectations for. So unfortunately, this was another one of our book club picks. Her Pretty Face by Robin Harding. It's been my most disappointing book of the year. And that's not even to say it's like the worst book that I've read so far this year, because it's definitely not. But Robin Harding is another adult thriller author, and I read her book The Arrangement last year and loved it. I had so much fun with it, and I've been wanting to pick up another one of her books since, which is why we chose Her Pretty Face for our book club. And I didn't hate this book. It's probably a pretty like solid 3-star read for me. Just coming in with the expectations for how much I enjoyed The Arrangement, this one was nowhere near that level of enjoyment for me, and it just felt kind of flat. Number 6 is biggest surprise. Probably Tell Me Lies by Carola Levering. I read this towards the beginning of the year, and this is like a new adult kind of, I don't even know how to describe this book. It follows this girl, Lucy, who was in this like really toxic on and off again relationship in college, and we're switching back and forth between the timeline of her in college in this relationship, and then I want to say like 5 years later, after they're all out of college and the whole friend group has like reunited for one of their weddings. And I saw this randomly in a bookstore and liked the cover and wanted to pick it up, and then I looked up reviews online and the reviews were really negative, so I decided not to buy the book. And the very next day I saw the book at my library and I was like, it's a sign. I don't have to pay for it, we're gonna get it from the library. And then I loved it and I devoured it in like 2 days. 5-star read. Like, I felt very personally attacked by this book and very triggered by this book, but I thought it was so well done. And I'll definitely read more books by this author in the future. This was just very surprising to me, both how much I connected with this book and then also just how much I liked it. Number 7 is a favorite new author, either a debut or new to you. I think the only one that would work for books that I've read this year, or an author that I was introduced to this year, would definitely be Lindsay Sands, who wrote that paranormal vampire romance series. There's like 30 books in that series or whatever. I've only read the first 4 so far, but it was exactly what I was in the mood for. Like, I wanted a trashy paranormal romance series about vampires, and it was exactly what I was looking for. I think she has a really, really funny writing style. Her characters are really well developed, and I've just enjoyed all of those books so far. And I had never heard of them before either. I'd never heard anyone talking about them on BookTube, so I had no expectations going into these books and was very, very pleasantly surprised. Number 8, newest fictional crush. No one. I'm sorry, like, I haven't read any books with like a swoon-worthy main character or love interest or anything. Like, I've also just kind of grown out of having fictional crushes, especially because I read a lot of young adult and I'm 23 now, and a lot of the boys in the books that I read are 16, so not really for me anymore. And then number 9 is newest favorite character. You know what, I do have an answer for this one. I just recently read City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert and I loved it, and our main character's name is Vivian, and it's a really interesting, can you see Max just like in the corner down here? I think it's really interesting because the book is basically her, hello Maxine, did you want to join the video? She really likes this window, so she's just gonna chill with us, I guess. Our main character Vivian is narrating her life story to this person and telling her basically from when she was 19 years old and a party girl in New York City through her entire life story, and I think she's like 90 when she's telling her story. And I really, really enjoyed this book because Vivian was such an intriguing character. So probably her, this 90-year-old woman. Number 10 is a book that made you cry. I don't know if I've ever actually physically cried reading any books so far this year. I can't even remember the last time I cried in a book, actually. But I feel like if it was going to be any of the books that I read so far this year, it would have been The How and the Why by Cynthia Hand. Like, for good reasons. I just found this book so touching and wholesome and cute and sweet, and I just really, really loved this book. This is another one that I almost said was my favorite book of the year. So it would have been like happy tears. This is a young adult contemporary where our main character was adopted and now she's of age and she's kind of looking for her birth mother, and we're switching back and forth between her timeline. She's like getting ready to go off to college, and then also looking back at her birth mom who gave birth to her when she was like 16 and then gave her up for adoption, obviously. And it was just a really, really well done book. I really, really loved this one. This was another book club pick. We've had a lot of good books in our book club this year. Number 11, a book that made you happy. We literally just talked about that, so I guess we could use the same book. Let me see if I have a different one. Nope, of all the books that I've read so far this year, that one's made me the happiest. Just like, let's be real, I don't read a lot of happy books. I read scary books, I read thrilling books, and I read smutty books occasionally. Nothing that's like really feel good happy though, usually. Number 12 is the most beautiful book that you've bought or received so far this year, and I've actually been very good this year about not buying books. Not because I don't want to buy books, it's just like I have so many books that I want to get rid of, and I was in the process of moving and stuff, and so I just like had all of this clutter and I didn't want to bring anything new into my condo. So I've just been reading ebooks and borrowing from my library and listening to audiobooks, and I've actually really enjoyed that because the thought of like accumulating more books stresses me out. So I'm going to completely cheat for this one and say my own book, Poems for the End of the World. This isn't even meant to be like a self-plug. This book isn't out yet. It's coming out in October, but I got my cover this year. I'll put up a picture on the screen, and this is my favorite cover of all of my books so far, and I just think it's so pretty. I love it so much. I'm so happy with it. So it kind of counts. I think it's a really pretty cover, and I'm really excited for it to be out and to have physical copies of it myself because I love this cover so much. I guess now that we're talking about it, I will do a shameless self-plug. You can pre-order this book. I'll have a link down below. It's coming out October 1st. And our final question, number 13, is what are some books that you need to read by the end of the year? I have been so go with the flow this year. I've picked up so many books that I'd never heard of before. I've just kind of not been super stressed about the books that I've been reading. So honestly, I don't even know. I'm just kind of running with my mood reading tendencies. So for me, like the only books I have to finish by the end of the year are whatever books my book club chooses for us to read each month. But some releases I would love to get to before the end of this year. We have Girls with Razor Hearts by Suzanne Young. This is the sequel to Girls with Sharp Sticks, which I read last year, and it was my favorite books of last year. Loved it. I don't know if I remember enough from the first book to jump into the sequel, so we'll have to do something about that. But I am very excited for the sequel. I've heard amazing things about Beach Read. I really want to read that now. All I know is it's a romance, and I think one of them is a writer, so it just like sounds like it's gonna be right up my alley. I want to read the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, considering that's been my favorite book so far this year. I think the title is Good Girl, Bad Blood. Not a huge fan of that title, but we will read it. I still need to read House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J Maas. I'm intimidated by how gigantic it is, and I'm also concerned that maybe I just have like outgrown her books and I won't love them as much anymore. And as long as I put off reading that book, I can pretend like I'm still gonna love it. Like, I'm afraid to read it and not like it because I want to like it. I still need to read A Heart So Fierce and Broken by Bridget Kemner. I have it. It's literally sitting in my bedroom. That's the sequel to A Curse So Dark and Lonely, which is a Beauty and the Beast retelling that I really liked last year. Still haven't read that one. So those are just a few. Anyway, I think that's gonna be it for today's video. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. If you're new here, maybe subscribe and stick around. I'd love to have you here. I'll have links for everything down below in the description. There's like so many things down there at this point. I can't even like list them off at the end of my videos without it just sounding ridiculous. Oh, I will say though, if you're not already subscribed to my newsletter, you may want to do that. I'll have my website linked down below. Just scroll to the bottom of the page and put your email in because I'm gonna be doing a lot of things through that coming up. If you want to be an ARC reader for upcoming books, if you want to be a beta reader for works in progress, just like things like that. Also, I would just appreciate it if you would join my mailing list. Oh, and if you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up. But other than that, I'll just see you guys in another video very soon. Bye.
So hit me. So hit me. So hit me. First a confession. With you, I feel a connection. With